So we kind of went through the genealogies of the 12 tribes, and two tribes were that got the most press were that of Judah and that of Levi in chapter 6. Uh, and that points to what Ezra is getting at to these post-exile Jews is the importance of the Davidic covenant and of the priesthood and the law of Moses. That's his point here, because here we are 80 some years after the first return of exiles from Babylon, and things are a mess. We've got no king, no son of David on the throne, and the priesthood is in a total wreck. And that's the purpose that Ezra is writing First and Second Chronicles. And let me qualify that: if he is the author, and everything points that way. So I'll continue to call him the author. It was certainly written during the time that he was there in the second return from Babylon, and it just has his name all over it. So that first 9 chapters is about one thing, and the reunification of all Israel. Israel has not been one nation since the end of Solomon's reign in 931 BC. Now it's about 450 BC, something like that. And for all those years, we've had this divided kingdom, the northern kingdom with the line up here, there's Jerusalem, and then the southern kingdom of Judah under David, and under the line of David. So Ezra is he's reminding the people in the first 9 chapters, this is who you are. You are the descendants of Jacob's 12 sons. And he goes through all the tribes in chapters 1 through 9. And then he gave the short story of Saul in chapter 10, which dealt with one day in his life, and it was the last day of his life, and that seemed to be a summary of what Ezra and God the Holy Spirit thought of Saul. And so then we come to chapter 11, to a place called Hebron, and Hebron's about 20 miles south of Jerusalem, and there's a series of hills that run down here. Jerusalem's about, in elevation, is about 2,500 feet. Bethlehem is about the same. Hebron, you go up a little to about 3,000 feet, but when you get down into the Negev desert here, you drop, and this is no man's land. This is where David spent 7 years running from Saul. And this is where he's going to make his headquarters when he becomes king over Judah. So you got the Dead Sea here, the lowest place in elevation on the whole planet, 1,500 feet below sea level. So you go from 2,500 feet, and about 10 or 15 miles to the east, you drop 1,500 feet below sea level to the Dead Sea. Same with Bethlehem. So just one notable place down here is where Abraham made an oath with somebody, or what, Abraham or somebody. Beersheba is the well of the oath. That's down around 1,000 feet above sea level in the Negev desert down here. Over here is Sinai, Egypt, and Arabia is over here. Jordan would be over here. Syria is up here. And so within the land of Israel, which was formerly called Canaan, we have this little slice right here of Philistia. That's called Gaza today. One of the capital cities of Philistia was Gaza. Down here, and then there was Ekron and Ekron. There's three others that were capital cities of Philistia, and they were city-states that had their own king, but they were united as Philistines. David will eventually break that up. He's almost going to exterminate the Philistines, but that doesn't come for a while. But we're going to get into the section that deals with David now. And David, of course, is key, not only as the first king over the first king of promise over all Israel. That's David. Samuel anointed him when he was a kid. Samuel went to his house one day because God told him, I want you to go down there and anoint a king. This was not, Saul had not been far along in his 40-year reign, and God had already rejected Saul. Didn't end his reign, but he was rejected. And Samuel went down to Bethlehem and found a man named Jesse. And Jesse had, and Samuel told him what he'd come to do. And so he said, let's see your sons. So he starts trotting out his sons, 7 of them. And every one that comes before Samuel, God says, no, that's not him. You know, well, okay, so now the 7th son is been rejected. Now what do we do? So Samuel just says, have you got any more sons? Oh, yeah, I've got a kid out there watching the sheep. Well, let's see him. So here he comes, this gangly little, probably 12-year-old kid, and he smells like sheep. He's dirty. He's probably got scabs on his knees, and he just looks at him and says, him? God says, him. So he anointed him officially with oil, and then what happened over the next few years? Well, nothing happened. Saul's still king, still getting in trouble, David, when he's 15 or 16, maybe, he goes to see his he's got two brothers, older brothers, that are fighting in the Israel's army with Saul, and they're fighting the Philistines down in the valley of Elah. And David gets there with some stuff, some bread and some cheese, I think, for his brothers, sent from his dad. And he wants to know, what's going on, and his brothers kind of blow him off, saying, what is a little kid like you doing around here? And all of a sudden comes thundering down in the valley of Elah, this giant guy, this Philistine named Goliath, and he's just daring. He's been doing this every day for a month. He's just daring Israel, send somebody down. Let's end this war. Send your best guy down here. Well, their best guy should be King Saul, but he's not about to go fight that giant. And David just looks at his brothers and thinks about it. He says, what is the problem here? Why doesn't somebody go down there and fight this uncircumcised Philistine? Which is as close to a swear word, I guess, as he could get. He says, I'll fight this guy. I put it in God's hand, and we'll fight him. And he goes to Saul, and Saul, grown man, 40 plus years old, a veteran warrior king is what he is. And he hears David, and he says, yeah, well, okay. All right, here, try on my armor. So David tries on his armor, and remember something about David, he's just a kid. And Saul, when you meet Saul, he is head and shoulders taller than anybody in Israel. His armor matches his body, not David's. And you can imagine what David looks like when he tries on Saul's armor. It's like a 3-year-old kid putting on one of Dad's suits just for fun. So he said, well, I don't need that. I've got to, this is up to God. And besides that, I'm an expert with a sling and a rock. Solomon said, go home, David. But he doesn't. Well, we know the rest of the story of David. And from then on, and then David, when he's old enough, he joins Saul's army and becomes part of Saul's palace. He fights with Saul along with Saul's son Jonathan, and he has quite a name. Remember the song the women sang about David and Saul when he came back from battle? Saul has slain his thousands and David his 10,000s. And boy, that was one thing that set Saul off. One of many things that set Saul off. And from then on, he is on a mission to kill David. So after David makes the split, and he goes on the run, he doesn't want to kill Saul. Saul, no matter what, is God's anointed until he dies. That's how David sees it. And he's not going to touch Saul, but Saul really wants to touch him. So then he goes on that 7-year all over the place. Well, at one point, David gets, actually 2 times, David tries to join the Philistines, of all things. Talk about paradoxes. And he acts like a crazy man, and they get out of here. Go back home. But then he goes back and he joins the Philistines, and so he convinces them, and they know who he is. He's the guy that killed their toughest warrior, Goliath. They know exactly who he is, and they're looking at him through, squinted eyes all the time. But they let him come over, and he says, "Here's what I'll do." He says, "If you guys give me if you give me a town of my choosing," he says, "I'll bring, I'll make raids of the people," and they assume he means the people of Judah, because where he's going to wind up is in Ziklag. It's far away from the other 5 capitals, but that's the deal. I'm going to provide you guys with sheep, goats, donkeys, whatever I can raid. And they assume he means over here, but he means down. That's David does make raids and he does take stuff, but it's not in Judah. It's over here in Ammon and Edom. So anyway, he keeps his part of the bargain until one day he gets up there with his quota, and all the time he's been gathering people. People have been coming from all over the place to join David. So he goes up there one day, and there's going to be a war between the Philistines and Saul. And David's there, and he speaks up and says, "I'll go with you." And they look at him and say, "What do you mean you'll go with us? He's one of you, right?" "Yeah, I'll go. I'll fight." So what exactly does he mean when he says, "I'll go and I'll fight"? That's up to, I don't know. Would he fight against Saul? Absolutely not. No way is he going to take place in that fight that way. But David knows something. These guys are never going to let him go with him. That ain't going to happen. And it doesn't happen. And David goes back to Ziklag, and that battle took place. And so that's where David is at the end of chapter 10 when Saul dies. He is in Ziklag, and the people of Judah move him up to Hebron. That is a city of a national hero named Caleb. Caleb is the one who founded Hebron, the Caleb that fought with Joshua between 400 or 500 years ago. But so he makes that. Judah makes him king of Judah, and he's there for 7.5 years. And that's where we come into chapter 11. 7.5 years after David was made king over Judah, we come to chapter 11 and verse 1. Then all Israel gathered to David at Hebron and said, "Behold, we are bone of your bone, we are bone of your bone and your flesh. In times past, even when Saul was king, you were the one who led out and brought in Israel. And the Lord your God said to you, you shall shepherd my people Israel, and you shall be prince over my people Israel. Verse 3, so all the elders of Israel came to the king at Hebron, and David made a covenant with them in Hebron before the Lord, and they anointed David king over Israel according to the word of the Lord through Samuel. So this is the beginning of the United Kingdom as it was intended. And this is Ezra's point. This is supposed to be one nation, not two. And even when the nation was divided up in the northern kingdom, you couldn't keep all these guys together. So, okay, let's hold right there. First of all, if you go back to 2 Samuel, just back about eighth of an inch or so. 2 Samuel 5, you'll see where Ezra got this information. 2 Samuel 5 and verse 1, then all the tribes of Israel came to David at Hebron and said, behold, we are your bone and your flesh. Previously, did we just read that? We just read it word for word in Chronicles. And that tells you that Ezra is using, well, if you're going to use a source, 1st and 2nd Samuel is a pretty good source. But in verse 4, we learn some things that we don't know. Of 2 Samuel 5, David was 30 years old when he became king and reigned 40 years. At Hebron, he reigned over Judah 7 years and 6 months, and in Jerusalem, he reigned 33 years over all Israel and Judah. So, there we learn his age. That's where we learn the length. And so Ezra's readers and hearers of this, not everybody is literate in Israel. Not everybody can read. Rabbis, priests, some of the men, they can read, but the general population, no. So they would have to hear this, but they've heard Samuel before, and they would automatically make this connection, and they know that Ezra stopped, or he began after the death of Saul, and we don't get any of the history of David running, or David and Goliath, or David and the sheep, and David and Samuel, things like that. But he does in 1 Chronicles 11, where we just read that this, at the end of verse 3, that they knew, these elders, they knew that Samuel was the one who prophesied that you would be king. So they make David makes a covenant with them, and they anoint David king. So that word covenant is never to be taken lightly. This is a matter of life and death for covenant makers. You make a covenant, you stand by it no matter what, or else, because you're going to kill a sacrificial animal that says this is what happens to you or you if you break this covenant, for one thing. And then you take the sacrificial animal and you cook it, and you have lunch. You have a covenant meal, a communal meal, a communion after the sacrifice with the parties of the covenant. So it's a big deal, and anywhere in the East at that time, similar covenants were made in a similar manner. So this is what happens in Hebron 7.5 years after the death of Saul. David has been down in Hebron. He's been king over Judah for that time. Now, here's the but the important thing is, and the thing that Ezra is really getting at in verse 1 is, then all Israel. Now, our next verse in verse 4, then David and all Israel. That is what Ezra is trying to jam home to this people, that they are one people. Now, we're just going through a bunch of Old Testament history here. Now, it's interesting to me, and okay, I'm a New Testament believer. What do I do with this? You've got so many great pictures of the New Testament church right here. We've already seen it about going to the king, being drawn to the king, and becoming one of the king's own. There's the gospel right there, and that's what these would be elders of the tribes of the northern kingdom. They've come down because they are drawn there, and when they see the king, when they see David, they're in 100%. So, back there in 1 Chronicles 11 and verse 4, then David and all Israel went to Jerusalem. That is Jebus. Okay, in David's day at this time, when he is now been anointed by covenant, king over all Israel, he goes to Jebus. That is Jerusalem. And Jebus is full of Jebusites. And it is a walled city that takes up the very modern, it's still there, called the city of David. It's just a small portion in the very southeast corner of Jerusalem. And in David's day, that's all there was. There was a wall around it. It was less than a third of a mile long, and it was like 300 to 400 feet wide at most in places. It was, shaped like an appendix or something, long and skinny. And that was Ezra gives us no information. Actually, you don't, even in Samuel, you don't get any information of why David goes to Jebus. Well, if you stop and think about it, it's just part of their Canaanites. And Canaanites are not allowed in the land 400 years ago, Joshua began clearing them out, but he didn't finish the job because he did what people do. He died. And then you had the period of the judges, and that was a total debacle if it wasn't for God holding things together. And that's, believe me, that's what he does. So, Carol, were you going to say something?
Well, I was going to say it actually goes further back to Abraham when Melchizedek comes out, and it was called Salem at that time, right?
Yes.
And I was like,
Right here. So, Jebus is full of Jebusites who David says, you guys have to go. And so here's what happens. And the Jebusites, in verse 1, the inhabitants of the land were there. The inhabitants of Jebus said to David, you shall not enter here. Now, if you go back to 1 Samuel, you get a more detailed story here. But Ezra's real short here. You shall not enter here. Nevertheless, David captured the stronghold of Zion. Zion means something like a fort or a citadel or something like that, and it was within this little walled fortress city called Jebus. On this high spot, no doubt, was this hill called Zion. And some people say that that's what Temple Mount is called. No, this is not Temple Mount. Temple Mount is not in Jebus. It's not far, but it's not within this walled city. Not yet. Till the wall gets expanded. So right now, in verse 6, now David had said, whoever strikes down the Jebusite first shall be chief and commander. Okay. The next word you see is Joab. Joab. Boy, you talk about a character. This guy is it. He's not just a character. He is the son of Zeruiah. Zeruiah doesn't have a husband. This is a she, and she is David's sister. Joab is David's nephew. There's a couple others that we're going to meet that are sons of, she has 3 sons. So, Joab is the guy that found his way into the city, and if you know about Hezekiah's tunnel, there was a tunnel way before that went from the spring on the eastern side of Jerusalem that trickled down into the Kidron Valley, and that was a spring that was piped into the city of David through a tunnel that was built by these guys, the Jebusites, and maybe even before that, before Carol jumped on it, back in Genesis 14, you have Abraham meeting this guy named Melchizedek. He lives in a city called Salem. Salem. Salem is shalom, peace. He lives in peace. Before the Jebusites got there, before it was called Jebus in Genesis 14, it's called Salem, peace. And who comes out? This guy named Melchizedek. He just pops out of nowhere, and he's not just a citizen, he is the king of Salem. Melchizedek means king of righteousness, and the king of righteousness is the king of peace. Boy, and if you go to Hebrews, he really makes a big deal out of this as a type of Christ. And some people say he's so much a type of Christ. This must be Christ in Genesis 14. Well, it's not him. It's Melchizedek. He is like Christ, says the author of the Hebrews, which means he's not Christ, but there are some striking similarities that the king of righteousness is the king of Salem, the king of peace. And not only that, I don't even know how he finds Abraham's been out fighting, trying to get his nephew Lot back, his wayward nephew Lot, who got kidnapped. And Abraham got him back. And when he did, all of a sudden this Melchizedek shows up. And the author of Hebrews makes a deal. There's nothing known about Melchizedek. The way he puts it is he has no beginning and no end because he doesn't have a lineage. It doesn't say where he was born. It doesn't say if he was born. It doesn't say when he dies. It's like he's eternal. It's like he's Alpha and Omega, and the types go on and on. But Abraham worships this guy who lives in Salem. And he is a priest of the Most High God. You want to really get thrown a curveball, go back there. Where in the world did a priest of the Most High God come from? We've got Moses is way off in the future. We don't have any priests. There is a priest, and he is a priest of Yahweh himself, and he lives in this city. Abraham worships him. He gives him a tithe of of the spoils, and then he doesn't keep any of it. But he does give some to Melchizedek, and there's no explanation given. So you have this very strange story of Abraham giving worship to a man who is the high priest of the Most High God, a priest of Salem. So, yeah, well, anyway, there's a lot more to that than I'm telling you. But so that's this city's history. Abraham's day, Salem, peace. Now it's Jebus, and I don't know what Jebus means. It's a Canaanite word, without a doubt. So here they are. And what draws David to Jebus? Well, number one, it's not very far from Hebron, 20 miles. From Hebron to Jerusalem. And it's within Judah. And it's full of Canaanites who are called Jebusites. And evidently that was, now I could do a lot of guessing here and say that he was supernaturally drawn by the Holy Spirit to go to Jerusalem. And no doubt God's providence is at work here because that's God's chosen city. So that's what we're seeing. We're seeing man work and God work with him, and we don't know how, but that's what's going on. So Joab is the first guy in. He probably went through that tunnel where the water was piped into the city, and I don't know if it says that back in first Samuel or second Samuel, I guess, or not. I don't know. Second Samuel. But no matter what, Joab is the one who, plants the Israeli flag on the wall, and the city is captured. But it's captured by David. David is the one who gets credit, but he is not without rewarding the guy who does this, and he makes, eventually he will make Joab the general of his army, the general, the 5-star. So now, verse 7, then David dwelt in the stronghold. That was this little sliver down in the southeast corner of modern Jerusalem. One of, by the way, the most excavated places on the planet. Anyway, so he built, verse 8, he built the city all around, and I am going to suppose that means outside this wall, but he's going to expand the wall. Solomon's going to expand it more, and then Hezekiah is going to really expand it, but that's for later. So he built the city all around from the Millo, even to the surrounding area, and Joab repaired the rest of the city. Joab repaired, that must have meant that they went in there and broke things. That's what you do in war. That's what Rush Limbaugh used to say. War is killing people and breaking things. Sad but true. And Joab repaired the rest of the city. Verse 9, David became greater and greater. Why? Because the Lord of hosts was with him. That's why. So there's the story of the founding of Jerusalem as the center of the known creation and the unknown creation. That little spot on this little rock in the universe called Earth, there it is. And David is the one who makes it capital. So, comments or questions so far? I don't just want to blow by this. So, again, the important thing is all Israel in verse 1. All Israel in verse 4. In verse 10, we're going to see it again. All Israel. So now we come to verses 10 through 47 in chapter 11. Verses 10 through 47, guess what we got? Names, and more names. But we do have some narrative here. Interesting narrative, by the way. And in chapter 12, we got names, and more names. This is not a genealogy. This is David's army. This is the people who have been drawn to the king and who have made themselves soldiers in the king's army. Now, here in chapter 11, verses 10 through 47, here we've got the elite soldiers, top brass. In chapter 12, we've got regular army. But this is no regular army. This is David's army, and it is very typical and a foreshadow of the church that is also an army. And it's an army because Paul in veiled words, calls us an army because he tells us in Ephesians chapter 6 to put our armor on. But we don't fight against flesh and blood. We fight against principalities and Satan and things like that that we can't even see. And we fight with God's word. We fight with the gospel. We fight by putting on truth. So, but here we have the Old Testament, not equivalent, but we do have the foreshadow of the church. Some of these guys are mighty men. Some of them aren't mighty men, but they're like mighty men in chapter 12, in chapter 11. And then in chapter 12, we don't have mighty men, but we've got regular army. But these guys are serious fighters, is what they are. So let me see if I can go through this. Okay. Now, these are the heads of the mighty men, verse 10, 1 Chronicles 11. These are the heads of the mighty men whom David had, who gave him strong support in his kingdom. What is the first thing you learn about David as king right there? He is who he is, but he's got disciples, doesn't he? He's got soldiers who support him. In fact, this doesn't go off unless David has these disciples. Now, who gave him strong support in his kingdom, together with, there's the two words again, all Israel, to make him king according to the word of God concerning Israel. These constitute the list of the mighty men whom David had. Number one, Jashobeam, the son of a Hachmonite. Now, these places, that's a place, Hachmonite. I don't know where it is. A lot of these places, they think they know where they were, but a lot of them, they just say they don't exist anymore. Or this is modern day so-and-so. So, he was the chief of 30. He lifted up his spear against 300 whom he killed at one time. But that's a mighty man right there. So him and his 30 killed 300 Philistines at one time. If you go back to Samuel, okay, here we go with some more explanations. If you go back to Samuel and read it's 800. So here we've got one of those things, one of those copyists got sloppy and turned 800 into 300 or vice versa, however it goes. No matter what, it doesn't matter if it was 130 against 100. Now, it makes it sound like that this guy did this all by himself. No. He had 30 guys. These mighty men, they were like SEAL troops or Green Berets. There was a group of them, and they had a leader. So after him, verse 12, was Eleazar, son of Dodo, the Ahohite, who was one of the three mighty men. He was with David at Pasdamim when the Philistines were gathered together there for battle, and there was a plot of ground full of barley, and the people fled before the Philistines, but they, Eleazar, with his mighty men, the mighty men with his men, they, verse 14, took their stand in the midst of the plot and defended and struck down the Philistines, and the Lord saved them by a great victory. So, okay, all right. These mighty men do mighty things, all right? Now, verse 15, now 3 of the 30 chief men, here's one of the, now we're dividing up the army into groups, went down to the rock of David, into the cave of Adullam, while the army of the Philistines was camping in the valley of Rephaim. He's close to Bethlehem here. Verse 16, David was then in the stronghold, while the garrison of the Philistines was then in Bethlehem. Okay, that's, we've got a city of David in Jerusalem and in other places. Bethlehem is called the city of David. In Matthew, here today in the city of David, a child is born. Bethlehem. So David gets a lot of airtime. So David's not far from there. Hold up, verse 17. David had a craving and said, "Oh, that someone would give me water to drink from the well which is by the gate." So the 3 broke through the camp of the Philistines and drew water from the well of Bethlehem, which was by the gate, and took it and brought it to David. Nevertheless, David would not drink it, but poured it out to the Lord. Boy, you talk about snubbing 3 guys who just risked their lives. What an awful thing to do. Oh, what a thing for a man after God's own heart to do. And a guy who recognized devotion, perseverance in his men. This was a salute to these men, not a snub, when he took that water that they just risked their lives to get, and he poured it out as an offering, a sacrifice to God. It was the highest honor he could give them and God. Verse 19, and he said, "Be it far from me before my God that I should do this. Shall I drink the blood of these men who went at the risk of their lives? For at the risk of their lives they brought it." Therefore, he would not drink it. These things the 3 mighty men did. These are guys who love their king. They love, and now if you read commentaries on this, they go right after David, you know, he's running from Saul. This is back when he was running from Saul, and David's just having a little pity party here, and he's pretty close to home, and he says, "I just want to go home. I just want to drink a water from home. That's where mom and dad are." Well, that's not where mom and dad are. So, by the way, soon after David goes on the run, he gets his family out of Bethlehem. Why? Well, because Saul is on the prowl. Who would Saul? Look, Saul slaughtered a whole city full of priests without even blinking an eye. Or he had a guy do it, but he's the one that did it. What would it be for him to drag David's family out in the front yard and execute them right there, and maybe David's watching? That would be like Saul. But David, he got mom and dad. Sister Zeruiah is with him the whole time, with her 3 nephews, or with her 3 sons, Joab, Abishai, and Asahel. And but he sends mom and dad to Moab. Moab is a perennial enemy of Israel. Why would he send mom and dad to Moab? His dad's grandmother came from there, Ruth. Yeah, yeah. Uh, well, so anyway, I could make more of that than what's given, but that was probably the connection. Ruth was David's great grandmother, and so by the way, when back in 1 Samuel 22, 1 Samuel 22, verses 1 and 2, this is 1 Samuel 22. It must be, yeah, I'm fighting here. Oh, I wrote that down wrong. First down. 1 Samuel 22 is when David goes on the run and gets the bread and the sword from the priest at Nob. And when Saul finds out, he slaughters the whole town because they helped him. Well, anyway, the verse I'm looking for is the verse that says that David, when he started on the run, it wasn't very long before he had 400 people following him. 400 people. How do you hide 400 people? And not only that, they keep on growing. This is at the beginning of the 7 years. 400, including his family. Talk about, he's like a Moses in the wilderness. But the verse I'm looking at says what kind of people come to him. And they're people who are in debt. They're people who are wanted by the law. They're lowlifes. Look at 1 Corinthians chapter 1. Maybe I got this one right. 1 Corinthians 1 in verse 26. 1 Corinthians 1:26 says this. Now keep in mind the kind of people that come to David. They're the riffraff. They're consider your calling. 1 Corinthians 1:26. Consider your calling, brethren, that there were not many wise according to the flesh, not many mighty, not many noble, but God has chosen the foolish things of the world to shame the wise, and God has chosen the weak things of the world to shame the things which are strong, and the base things of the world to and the despised. God has chosen the things that are not, so that he may nullify the things that are. This is what happens to David. When he begins his own wilderness run, he attracts the bottom of the barrel people. And that's just what Paul is saying the church is like. God chooses who did Jesus go around healing? Who did he call his disciples? Fishermen? Fishermen stink. 24 hours a day they stink. And not only that, you got 4 guys, 2 of them's dad is involved. They've got 2 boats. These are not, when you think of a fishing boat, what do you think of? You're from Alaska, you know what a fishing boat looks like. These things are, well, the fishing boats on the Sea of Galilee weren't. The point is, these guys, these were not wealthy fishermen. Who else? He does call wealthy people into the discipleship, tax collectors. But you talk about bottom of the barrel. He, that's just what Paul must be referring to when his point is not that you're garbage, not that you're bottom of the barrel, but you are the weak, until you understand that you are the weak things on planet Earth, he cannot make you strong. And if you try to do things in your own strength as a believer, you lose. So, at the end of verse 31 there in 1 Corinthians, he says, so that it is written, let him who boasts, boast in the Lord. That's what happened. These guys who come to David, their boast is not in themselves. It is of David. He's the king. So some of, that's David's, that would be his original ragtag deadbeats, who would no doubt, some of them, make it into this list that we're reading in First Chronicles. Mighty men, they don't sound like mighty men. Now, I could be all wet. Maybe none of them make it in. But I'll bet you some did. I bet we're reading the names of people who've been with David for a while. Probably some of these were in debt, on the run from the law. But who knows? But now they're not. Now they're mighty men. What happened to them? They've been under the king's guidance for 7.5 years. And now they're not dregs of the society anymore. They're mighty men. That's what happened. It's a word called sanctification. That's what happened. So, okay. A verse back in 1 Chronicles 11, verse 20. As for Abishai, the brother of Joab, all right, this is one of the other nephews of David. He was chief of the 30. He swung his spear against 300 and killed them. And he had a name as well as the 30, and that should probably be 3. I don't know how your versions read. Okay, 3 is probably correct there, meaning the 3 5-star guys. So, verse 21, of the 3, there we go. It seems like it corrected itself. Of the 3 in the second rank, he was the most honored and became their commander. However, he did not attain to the first 3. Okay, so okay, I can go on and keep that's the next guy in verse 22. I guess I will go on for just a second. Benaiah, he was the guy who struck down, let's see, the 2 sons of Ariel, of Moab. Well, that would probably make eyes light up in Ezra's day, but I don't know who these. But one thing you can know, these are famous, world famous warriors right here, Moabites. And Benaiah took out both of these guys. He also went down and killed a lion inside a pit on a snowy day. Well, okay. That was a brave thing to do, go after a lion that's in a hole on a snowy day. Okay, verse 23, he killed an Egyptian, a man of great stature, 5 cubits tall, that's 7.5 feet. Now in the Egyptian's hand was a spear like a beaver's wing, but he went down to him with a club. Benaiah, went down to this Egyptian with a club and snatched the spear from the Egyptian's hand and killed him with his own spear. All right, now we're getting into John Wayne stuff here. But that's the point. You've got what else does Paul say about the church that I didn't read? The church is one body, but it's made up of many members. Some are hands, some are eyes, some are ears, some are feet, whatever. Nobody is everything. It takes all the parts to make up the body. This is what you're seeing in David's army. He's got a group of, right here in chapter 11, of the top guys, the brass. They're all Jews except some of them. One of them's name is Uriah the Hittite. There in about verse, somewhere. By the way, in verse 39, Zelek is an Ammonite. That's an enemy of Israel. But he's one of the top guys here. And verse 41, Uriah the Hittite. Nobody looks around much when they hear Uriah's name because everybody knows the story. That's the guy David most coldly and cowardly, as the mighty king of Israel, had him murdered. But anyway, Uriah just wasn't some guy. He was one of the mighty men. He was a top guy, and he was a Hittite. Hittites are on the decrease now. The Hittite nation, even in the days of Abraham, was a mighty nation. It was a world power up there in Turkey. And it was for a long time, but when you get to David's day, it's on the decline, and a lot of these former Hittite soldiers become mercenaries. That's probably what Uriah was, and there were probably lots of them that were mercenaries, paid foreign soldiers. One of them was an Ammonite. But here we've got these guys included in what is called all Israel. The list goes on, and but I think the point is made for us today. What in the world does this have to do with us? Oh man, it's such a great picture of the church that has many parts of one body. That's what we're seeing here. 3,000 years ago in David's day is a foreshadow, a picture, a type of what the body of Christ is today. There are mighty men that are mightier than others. And then there's guys under them that are mighty. And then when we get to chapter 12, there's just soldiers. And chapter 12 continues the story of all Israel, because we've got 3 tribes, or 4, Benjamin, Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh. Now they're coming down to Hebron. And Benjamin, by the way, that's the tribe of Saul. And these Benjamites, they come to join David. And you talk about a bunch of warriors, they can handle a sling with the left hand and the right hand. They're switch hitters, which is something unimaginable in the Middle East. You are right-handed, and that's all there is to it. So we just go through that if you want. Go through those names. There's not much narrative there. Lots of names of all Israel, but these are subordinates to the guys in chapter 11, the top mighty men. So there we go with the picture of today's modern day church. So I may pick out some things in there next week, but we're heading for something that's very important to Ezra. Chapter 13, that is the Ark of the Covenant. Where is the Ark of the Covenant, and what is the Ark of the Covenant? Well, don't miss a single exciting episode, and we'll see you next week.